Hello everyone, this is the second discussion topic. It's still the free school buses. Today I'm joined by Cllr Amanda Williams of Coity. I'm getting a second perspective from the county area because different areas require different needs. So, Councillor Williams, thank you for joining me.
No problem. Thanks for inviting me.
For everybody who's watching this, her name isn't really Martin because we've got Martin up on the screen here. Um, I spoke to Councillor Williams earlier, and he had his take on this free school bus provision and the problems it's bringing up. And there's a petition going around now. Um, it was highlighted in an article by Owen Donovan earlier today about this petition, but it seems that this petition's been going on, I think, for a year because there's comments on that petition that go back a year. So there's been not a recent thing, it's a long time problem that BCBC have had to deal with. We heard from Alex about the difficulties with Cllr and other areas around Pencoed. What are the specific problems that Coity are dealing with in regards to the free school buses?
There's a number of problems. I've had a number of referrals in recently. I'll start off with the one with regards to comprehensive schools. Um, Children now are having to walk to comprehensive schools. So they walk to the comprehensive in Cllr. They walk to Bryn Teg. They're required to walk now. The catchment area for most of Coety is Pencoed comprehensive. However, some of Park Derwyn actually lies within Lychard catchment. So their
Hmm.
catchment is Bryn Teg. So because they live less than 3 miles from Bryn Teg, the children have to walk. And what I've raised with the Director of Education, I had a meeting with him recently, is that particularly in new housing estates, which are large estates, is over 1,500 houses, people are moving there from England, they're moving from out of county, they don't know the area. And then they've got an 11-year-old child who is then going to comp from Coity Primary, and they're being told right now you have to walk. As a parent as well of three children, two who are in a comprehensive school, um, it's a very it's very difficult to let go of your children, first of all, when they're just 11
Yeah.
years old. You're only starting to give them some freedom. They've only just in the last 1, maybe 2 years, started walking to the primary school. And then they're being asked to walk up to 3 miles each way to school. So the first thing is the length of time it's taken. The second issue, which I raised with the Director for Education, is that they don't always know the route. And you're told there's a safe route. I've had a number of safe routes be sent to parents. One was walking down the new link road from Coity into town. There's a footpath halfway down, but it doesn't go all the way into town. So they were saying the safe route for children was to walk on the grass side of the
Yeah.
road where there are signs saying no pedestrians because there is no footpath. So they're telling children to break the rules of the road. And then further along that road, the grass goes totally, and they'd have to step out onto a 50-mile-per-hour road
Yeah.
to go past. Um, so they don't actually look at the routes. I think a lot of the time they put the postcode into the system and it comes out with a walking route that nobody has actually visited. A lot of
Yeah.
people don't work, or they work for BCBC, they don't live in the area, so they're not familiar with these routes. And particularly when you look at new estates like Park Derwyn, you've got a number of streets they've got to walk through first. And another issue I had, it was with Tremor Casteth and Gertha Casteth when they were telling children they had to walk to Cllr Primary School. The routes they were giving them were through Cllr, through different streets, not the main roads,
Yeah.
taking them through private streets. And these children, I've lived in Bridgend my whole life. I grew up in Lychard. I went to Lychard School. I went to Bryn Teg. I know the area. But even I was looking at these maps thinking, I'd get lost, I'd get confused. And how an 11-year-old is able to decipher a road map and walk that,
Hmm.
I just don't understand. So I raised that and I said, you need to be looking at, particularly for the crossover when children go to comprehensive school. It's an awful lot to put on those children, particularly in that first year. They're unsettled, they don't know where they're going. Not always all go into the same school. You'll have some children go into one comprehensive, some go into another. And you might not have a group of friends you can walk with either, so you're being told to walk on your own. Some of these footpaths aren't lit, which is another concern, because if you're leaving school in the winter and it's taking you an hour and a half to get home, halfway along that journey, you're in pitch darkness. And if you walk into Bryn Teg from Coity, you have to walk through the town centre in the dark, an 11-year-old on your own. I drive my 2 children to comprehensive school because I won't let them walk, because I'm not letting them go in the dark. Because this day and age, you don't know what's going to happen. So that's the one concern. The other concern then is, if you look at a lot of case law, it says that children, particularly at age 11 and 12, cannot guess the speed of a car, the travelling speed of a car by looking at it. So quite often they will try and run across the road without realising that car's doing 30, 40, 50, how long it'll take to get to them. And a big concern for us in Coity is the only safe walking route to the schools in Cllr and Bryn Teg is through Litchard Cross. Litchard Cross is the main route to the hospital, where you will have ambulances going through red lights quite often. You have a lot of traffic, a lot of buses, and there is no pedestrian crossing on those lights. So children are having to take their life into their hands, and they're having to run between red lights when they think it's okay to do so. And quite often they're having to run across when it's a green light for cars. So that's a concern, particularly when an elderly gentleman was killed about 2 years ago on that same stretch of road, crossing to catch the bus. And I'm terrified that a child is going to be injured. So I've raised this numerous times, and I've been told, oh, it is a safe walking route, it's been assessed, we've got an assessment. And I disagree. I really don't think it's safe. I wouldn't allow my children to walk there. And I really feel for all the parents who are saying that they don't want to send their child. And the most ridiculous thing, if you think of walking, I don't know, people wouldn't necessarily know the area. If you're walking from Coity to Bryn Teg, you have to walk through the town. And that is the quickest route, and that is the most direct route. However, if you walk into the comprehensive school in Cllr, the Catholic school, the safe walking route they're giving children is not down the new footpath that they've built at the back of the hospital, because that hasn't been assessed yet, although it doesn't have any street lighting and it's really dark with bushes, so anyone could be hiding there. And I don't like walking there in the dark on my own, and I certainly, again, wouldn't let my children do it. Is they've sending them the same route as Bryn Teg, sending them across from Coity to Litchard Cross, down past the hospital, through town, then back up into Cllr that way. So it's twice the distance as if they'd had that straight route. They've put a footpath in, but there's no street lighting. If they'd put lighting on that route, there would have been a quicker, straighter access for children. But the routes they're giving, I just don't know. It's potluck. And the same children in houses next door to each other could be sent a different safe walking route. There's no consistency. And I just think what they do is, if the system says we'll find a route that's less than 3 miles, it doesn't matter which way it takes you. If it takes you twice as long because we're sending you in an obscure route that goes off the wrong direction first and then back, as long as it's under 3 miles, it's fine. And I've said that's not fine. So in my recent meeting with the Director for Education, I did discuss this, and I did say, as part of the package for when children leave primary school and go to comprehensive school, if you're going to make these children walk on their own to school, you need to prepare them. You need to work with the schools so that parents are aware of the safe routes and are aware if there are buses available, because that will impact on the choice of school. Because some parents might then decide, well, I'll send my children, because in Coity, the catchment is Pencoed. Well, I might send my child to Pencoed instead, because I'd feel safer, even though it's not my first choice of school, because some of their friends are going somewhere else. and they can make informed decisions. So he has agreed to work with me on that, and we are looking at introducing something to make it clearer for parents. But I just think at the moment it seems to be a lottery of which house you live in as to what route you're given.
I, I think it's unfair for young pupils, especially when they're first starting 11, 12. It's daunting enough going to a new school. You're moving up, and there are people you're not going to know there because they come from all different areas of different primary schools around the area. Having to walk there alone, because not everybody does have friends that they can walk to school with. Somebody may have a friend that lives in a different area that has to take a different route. So they've got to work better with the primary schools before, as you say, before they move up to these schools, so they are aware of where they're going, how easy it is, and if there are buses that they can catch. But I know there's no bus that goes directly past Brenteg at this point, in Bridgend. I think there's one maybe.
There's a paid bus that you can get to school that goes around the houses, and by the time it gets to certain pickups, it's quite often full. But the problem is as well, you haven't got the discretionary transport at the moment. That's been paused. So parents can't even pay on an empty bus that BCBC are paying for. They can't pay for their child to have a space on that bus because it's been frozen, which again I think is ludicrous, because at least then, even though it's costing you so many £100 a year, you know your child is safe. And 11-year-olds are children. They are young children. They are still so naive in the world. And it takes I've got two children who've gone through this, and it takes a few years for them to start growing up and to start understanding. And even my oldest son now still sometimes will take chances on the road, and you think, why have you done that? It's not safe. And they make the choices of children, and they will sometimes go the quickest route, which isn't the safest route.
Yeah, they don't inherently see the dangers, because I think at that age you think we're young, we're invulnerable to things. You don't realise how dangerous a situation you actually put yourself in. It's hard to make that judgment. Even as adults, we still have.
Well, I drive my children to school, and I've made that choice. And every morning the roads are jam-packed because every other parent is driving their children to school as well. And you just think, what impact that's having on the environment. And then, it's gridlock. Every morning it takes what would normally be a 10-minute journey. It takes a good half an hour, sometimes up to 40 minutes, just to get them into school because everyone else is doing the same.
I know there would be some parents out there that will do it anyway because that's the way they are. But there are a lot of parents out there who are thinking about the safety of their children, especially walking from Park Derwin to that far, because it's quite far. And if in the winter when it is dark, you're coming through Bridgend at night, on a Friday evening, some places get out early and start going to the pubs and clubs around there, and there are going to be people who are drinking roughly around that time. You see it lunchtimes, and
well, you can see it if you go into town. Sometimes there are people all on the benches drinking, and then there's others down Coity Road, and this is the safe walking route for children. I used to do it if I'd missed. I was lucky when I went to when I lived in Litchard. I used to have a paid bus from the top of Litchard to Brenteg. But if I'd missed the bus, or I'd have an after school club or a match with netball, I'd have to walk home. And it would take me well over an hour, and it would be frightening because I would be walking on my own, and you take chances. And I know in my time, a young girl was murdered, and you think it still happens. We have to be protecting our children, looking after their safety, because if something happens, it's too late then.
Yeah. Moving off comprehensive school now, we'll move on to primary, because I feel people in Park Doan have been dealt essentially a double blow with Primary not being built correctly or to the correct scale that it needed to be built, and they're having now to go to other primary schools elsewhere, some just under that 3 mile limit as well, 2.9
Well,
miles I think one of them was, and
well, the school was built too small. This year, 32 in catchment nursery children were declined a place.
yeah,
It's similar figures for the last 3 years. Um, it doesn't help that they didn't realise when they built Park Derwin that the old field boundaries meant that part of Park Derwin was actually in Litchard catchment. So that's caused a few issues over the
yeah,
years as well, because people bought their houses believing they were in Coity catchment. Um, People in the village now where the school came from, when I've been a governor at Coity for 11 years, and I was in the meeting with BCBC when the director for education at the time said, I guarantee that every child in Coity village will have a place in the new school, the new Coity primary in Park Derwin, and nobody from the village can get a place. Children who live 400 metres from the school in Park Derwin cannot get a place in the school. So they've now been forced to go elsewhere. Now, the problem they've got there is a lot of the schools are now filling up in the area as well.
yeah,
So they can't get to Litchard anymore. They can't get to Pen y Fay. Coitchurch is full. There's a little bit of capacity in some of the schools. So these children are now having to walk to Cllr, for example, and the top of Park Derwin to the Welsh school in Cllr is just under 2 miles, 1.92 miles.
yeah,
So these children are having to walk past a school where some
yeah,
of their friends might be, because some neighbours are in, some others aren't. Um, so they have to walk past the school to another one. You can't ask a 3-year-old to walk 2 miles to school. It's just ridiculous. It's just there's been no thought into that, and I think that the way they're trying to deal with the capacity issue is there's Section 106 money that is available to extend Coity Primary. And that was the purpose of the Section
mm,
106. There's been additional houses in Park Derwin that have brought in additional funding. There's houses in Gerthe Castell and Tremor Castell that brought in funding for school places outside of what was the original Section 106 in Park Derwin. But BCBC are taking that money and they're putting it into the new Welsh school instead, which we need a larger Welsh primary school because
yeah,
there are capacity issues there. However, this money was intended for Coity children, and the Welsh school isn't a catchment school. It's a school,
yeah,
it will cover the whole of the borough. So they're taking this money so they don't have to fund the Welsh school themselves. They get a lot of Welsh government funding with a Welsh school, but that money should have been spent. So instead, children are now being forced in dribs and drabs to attend other schools and walk. So when they build a new Welsh school, I believe that all those all of those children who can't get a place in Coity Primary will have to go to the old Welsh School building, which is 1.92 miles from
yeah,
Park Derwin. So again, and particularly as it's nursery, the younger children are suffering because there are more of the younger children trying to get in. They will be walking almost 2 miles to school and back again. It's just, and then you've got issues where you've got some of the children who live in the village who have been able to get into the school, and they're older children because they've been there for quite
yeah,
a few years. They get a free paid bus from the village to Coity Primary when they can see the school from their houses, but there's no footpath on Heel Spencer. So rather than BCBC putting in a footpath to make it safer,
yeah,
they're paying for a bus year on year on year. They've been paying for it for 6 years. Sometimes there's 4 or 5 kids on the bus, a big bus. And you just think there's no forethought. You build these large estates, you don't look at the infrastructure. They took the
no,
Section 106 money and used that on Junction 36 instead of making safe routes to school, which should be the priority. If you're building a school in a new estate, you should make sure that all the houses link up to that school. And for example, the safe walking route that the system came out with the first few times for children in Tremacasteth, Gerrardcasteth and Coity Village to Coity Primary, and also the children who were in the Coity side of Cllr, who were also in catchment for Coity, was to walk through a field, through grass in the winter, walk through a field that's totally overgrown with trees, and they're expecting children on their own to walk to that school. So that's another issue I've had. I've also had an issue because in Coity, there are some families who have children in multiple schools. So they'll have one in one school, one in another school, because that's the only way they could get the children in. So, of course, particularly if you're talking about single parents, they cannot split their time and split themselves down in half and do 2 school runs. So I've had it suggested to me by BCBC that it would be acceptable to send an 8-year-old walk into school on their own over a mile to school from Coity to Cllr, when the school have said we will not accept any children under year 5 unaccompanied by an adult, and we will not release that child.
This is what people are supposed to do in that situation.
So I've had meetings with officers about that, because I just think it's such an ill thought out area. It's just seen as, oh, we'll make a saving here, with no real thought on safety, on doing the right thing. It is just, we'll save so many 100,000 if we cut all of this transport. And unfortunately, I think there's going to be a horrific event. And now I've got a legal background, and I've worked dealing with motor claims for years. And I've seen some horrific accidents, some horrific deaths on the road. And I know what to expect. I know, and I'm just terrified that it's going to happen on our roads.
Yeah. Just a couple of things. First of all, when you mentioned Heel Spencer, I was expecting Martin to jump in, push you out of the way, and go on a rant about Heel Spencer.
No, he's in another room.
The other thing is, it's not like they deliberately built the school too small. They were using completely the wrong formula. I think you mentioned this in a community council meeting once, and
yes, I was part of planning committee. Don't sit on planning anymore, but when I was part of it, I put my own name down to be the link for educational spaces, and I did meet with officers regularly, and we reviewed the formula. The formula was outdated, and it basically said that for every 10 houses that were built, only one of those would have primary age children in it. Out of that one house, 20% would choose a Welsh medium school and 20% would choose a faith school. So basically 60% of one household out of 10 would go to Coity Primary, which is total nonsense. So we've worked on the figures, and we've looked at everything, and we've used the Broadlands figures. So I am happy that the figures are now correct, because it didn't also include contributions at the time for special needs children. We weren't receiving any payments from developers for special needs places. And of course, they are far more costly to the local authority than a standard school place. So that's all been included, and it's all been updated. So I'm happy now that I would like to think that we won't have such a problem in the future with new developments, because there are a few developments in the pipeline throughout the borough with new schools. So I'm more confident on that. But it's not, to me, it seems like when you make a mistake, it's, oh, we've made a mistake and we're not going to try and fix it now.
No.
Don't worry, we'll find another way, and the children can just go elsewhere. Children's welfare, children's well-being is not being considered. I did take it to the Children's Commissioner, and unfortunately, she did say she'd investigate. But 2 years on, I haven't had that investigation. I've asked our local MP to chase for me as well, because we need to resolve these problems. We can't just leave them and brush them under the carpet and hope nothing will happen, because that's what we're doing at the moment.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say was, talking about the children walking from Parkdale into Cllr, does the safe route is that going through Litchard Industrial Estate?
No, not
It
for.
doesn't.
No, it goes down through Litchard Cross into town and back up the other way.
I'm not talking
That's
to the comprehensive. I'm talking
no, that's
primary.
yeah,
Oh, that's the
yeah,
same as well.
yeah. The other route they've given for primary school children is to go through different streets. And so when you look talking about primary age children, 9, 10, 11 year olds can walk to school on their own.
Yeah.
So they're expecting a 9 year old to read a map and go through different streets. So if you're looking at Brackler, there's an awful number of large number of streets, and they're expecting them to go off the main route in the maps they've been sending out to parents
Yeah.
and go through different private streets. I wouldn't allow my children to walk through private streets because they're not seen, they're not there. Then anything could happen once you're
Yeah.
walking past individuals' houses. It's not safe at all. Children should be encouraged to stick to main, well lit routes
Yeah.
that will have dropped curbs, that will have crossing points, because no residential streets have the traffic lights crossing points. A lot of them don't have drop curbs.
Yeah, and there should be well-used thoroughfares by
Yeah,
of several people, so they are visible to a lot of other
yeah,
people,
yeah,
not in areas where they could be on their own and very, very vulnerable at that point.
yeah. Well, I'm yet to see a map for primary or secondary school children that doesn't include some rather isolated areas.
Yeah, well, I was speaking to Alex earlier, and he said there doesn't seem to be any scheduled discussion on this coming up, but it's something that really needs to be discussed. There's safety concerns. There's concerns for children being isolated and left out of things, and so many other problems. And it's a case of, oh, we've caused a problem here. We acknowledge we've caused a problem, but we're not going to actually fix it. We're just going to
Yeah, they brush it
yeah,
under the carpet and hope that nothing happens.
talking about the school bus from Coity to Coity Primary, which I think is quite hilarious, the free school bus. It's they complain about heel spend. Community Council's been on it for years, and Martin is very big, and Bernard is very big in pushing a footpath on Heel Spencer. And it's not just a footpath for normal people to walk. It could be a safer route for children to get to school, which would cut out the bus over a period of many years. That would actually pay for itself in the cost from the cost of the bus, using the bus
Yeah.
all the time. But as has been mentioned before, there's no joined up thinking within the upper echelons of the council at the moment.
There's no one council approach. We're told time and time again, oh, it's one council. In almost 4.5 years, I have yet to see a one council approach at all with
No.
anything I've done.
Well, keep up the good work and keep up the pressure. And I hope this does come up in chambers soon, if not from yourself or Alex, from somebody else, because this petition...
And hopefully not for the wrong reason, that
No.
a child has been injured or worse.
Yeah.
And that's my fear.
I think
And that's the fear of all these parents, I think, who are signing this petition.
Yeah, it should be... it shouldn't be reacting. It should be reacting. You should be being proactive. And
Yeah.
think of the problems beforehand and try and sort it from there before anything serious does happen. And it's not even just a child being hit by a car nowadays. It's other things, as you said, these private streets that are just little warrens,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
It's so easy for a child to disappear nowadays. And
Yeah. And Coity, we have the prison in our ward.
yeah,
We have regular visitors who are constantly, visiting the prison who aren't from around here, and we're asking our children to walk past there. There's drones, the number of police cars who are constantly up in Coity because of the drones, because they drop in drugs into the
prison.
And residents are finding packages that have been dropped in their gardens. Children walking past. I know you can't protect them from everything,
No.
but we're expecting our children to walk and BCBC seem to think it's okay, but every parent knows their child. They know what their child can and can't do, and they know
Yeah.
whether they're sensible enough to cross roads or to walk long distances. And I don't think the parents are being listened to, and I think it's about time that they are. And for the sake of a few £100,000, the safety and the well-being and the welfare of children must come first.
And that is the point of this petition, that the safety of the children is the paramount. It should be the first thing that considered when school anyway. Safety first. Yes, education is important and they've got to have a good education, but the safety of getting to school while they're in school and after school should be at the forefront, with putting the correct things in place with the education as well.
Yeah,
Because you,
if these children are also expected to walk, and if they are entitled to a free breakfast, if they need a free breakfast, a lot of these children are forgoing their breakfast to walk to school. You've got
yeah,
to walk an hour and a half to school. Comprehensive children, um, primary children, if you've got to walk that distance, the first thing you're going to drop is your breakfast because you haven't got time for that.
no, and the first,
And to get in for a breakfast club, particularly if you're walking comprehensive school and you've got well over an hour's walk,
you're
you'll
leaving
have to
about
leave even earlier to get
half
in for
six, seven
breakfast
o'clock.
club to have some food.
Yeah, it's silly. Anyway, that'll be it for today because I think we've gone on for quite a while and it's longer
Yeah,
than the
sorry.
plan. No, no, it's not your fault. It's a very important subject, and I'm sure when I do sit down and interview yourself, your husband got in there first with the interview. Um, we'll talk more about this and other problems because I hear your reports every month being on Coity Higher Community Council, and there's a lot that does go on with Tremor Casteth, Gather Casteth, and Park Derwin, Heel Spencer, and throughout the area that is of concern, and I'm sure more people will have a lot of questions for yourself. And there was none for
Yeah,
Martin. Nobody wanted to hear from him really.
they wanted
But
him to shut up, probably.
probably, but I'm sure we'll get questions for yourself because you are a very active county councillor within your area. You're very well known, and there are a lot of people who do come to you for help and advice. So thank you, Amanda, for joining me on this little discussion, however long it was, that I can't see at the
No,
moment.
thanks very much.
And we'll speak again soon. All right. Bye,
Yeah,
everybody.
great. Thanks very much. Bye.